So the first set is going to be watches that I have that are my outdoor watches. These are the ones that fit the bill for all kinds of uses. Hunting, it could be firewood gathering. Oh yeah. Big boy! Oh crap! Yeah! Woo! Could be some work. I do work outdoors, but most of this has to do with just surviving the elements. That includes water, dust, sunlight, temperature changes, and all that. So sit back and enjoy this section of my State of the Collection video on my outdoor series. We're going to start with the sport watches, and the sport watches in my book are watches that have a water resistance of 100 meters. They can handle some shock and some vibration. They have a sturdy strap or bracelet, and they typically have a lower profile. They're not a real high profile watch. They're not kind of that Casio G-Shock type watch, which certainly can be used for sport, but it has such a high profile that it kind of catches on things. So for me, sport has a lot to do with some sleekness, but also some capabilities to handle some outdoor activity. So we'll start off with this one over here on the left, which is the Penn, the Islander Penn. And this watch is one of my more interesting purchases, I think, recently because of a couple of reasons. Number one, it does have that railroad feel to it because of the design, the railroad track that goes around between the hour markers. And it also has an interesting lume. So the lume on this is a ring of lume that goes around the hour, but it does not go all the way to the center. It's good and bad. It's a very creative look to the lume. It's also one that has a problem because you have a hard time seeing the hour hand when it comes to the lume on this watch. So it's not my favorite design for lume. I think Mark over at Island Watch should take a look at that and maybe either change the handset a little bit to have less of a end on the hour hand that's really pointed and narrow, and maybe have it be a little bit thicker, or have the lume get closer and closer to the center, if not the entire dial get loomed up, because it's really hard to read the time when it's just the lume and it's in the dark. So that's kind of the negative. The positive is this watch is a beautiful sport watch. It has some of the polished areas, it has some of the brushed areas, it has a nice black leather strap. It also has a display case back. So for those of you looking for a little bit of something on the back side, you can see that the display case back is really nice. Great spacing on the holes for the strap, which is also a concern for me, so that you get a nice fit of this watch on the wrist. So the Islander Penn is a great overall watch. As far as cost goes, it's a lower cost watch. It has the Seiko movement on it, but it does a great job. I like the watch a lot for the sport reason. My wife actually wears this more than I do, and I'm gonna have to start wearing this a little bit more just to make sure she gets the message that it's my watch. Next up is the second Hour Mandala, and the Mandala is, when it comes down to watches that I've kind of looked at for a long period of time, probably the most, this is one of them. And I happened to get a hold of a limited edition. This is one of the earliest editions of the Mandala, and you can tell because the gray dial, it has the gold outlines around the hands and the indices. So it's a limited edition, and I like it. And this was the preference that I wanted to start with, and I found it used, so it's great that way. The overall design of the watch, it's just, there's so many features about it. Look at the review on this one. It's a great watch. The case back, display case back with some design features on the rotor, so that's kind of cool as well. But you'll notice that second hour, they accentuate the 12, the 4, and the 8. So the watch face, or the dial, is split up into thirds. Nice big date window so that you can see the date. Takes up the entire 6 o'clock indice, which I prefer. The hands are unique. There's a lot of unique features about this watch that I really like. The bracelet is really nice. It has a great clasp to it. Very, very well done. Plenty of micro adjusts. Anything that's 4 or more, it generally fits my wrist much better than some of the ones that had just 3. I don't even look at bracelets that have 2. I think it's just, you're just asking for a watch that is too tight or too loose. So the finish on this watch is off the charts. It's awesome. It has a Miyota 9000 series movement, so it has a smooth sweeping hand. Great, great sport watch. San Martin Pilot watch. Now, this is a watch that I put in the sport category because, you know, it's got the field watch, the pilot watch look to it. It's got 100 meters of water resistance. Has a nice sapphire crystal at the top. Both of the previous ones are also sapphire crystal. Great design. I love the second hand on this, just the transition from a off-white to a red. You can see the red accents on the 12, 3, 6, and 9, and also the railroad track on the inside of the hour markers that go around. And there's just a lot of great features about this watch as well. It's an automatic closed case back, but just a beautiful watch. Nice leather strap, kind of a different brown. I'm not a huge fan of the brown, but it does go very well with the blue dial. So as far as the dial goes, I like this watch a lot. It's just got a really great sunburst effect to it. You'll see that in the review, that it really just does a great job of bursting that light all over the dial. So with this kind of a pilot field watch look, we're going to jump up to the field watches, and we're going to start off with a really cheap one. This is called the MDC. This watch is less than $20, full lume dial, quartz movement. It has a great NATO strap. It's a little bit long, so you can see all the holes on here. It's a long NATO strap. This is one that gets tucked back in, not a big deal. But I just really like it. I use this for the nurse video, watches for nurses, medical professionals, EMTs, that kind of thing, LE. And it was one of my favorite watches. It also scored very high as far as legibility goes. It has that red second hand, easy to read dial. It's a field watch style watch. It's got a lot of just simplicity to it. And I also like the case coloring on here is great. So overall, just a nice cheap, less than $20 watch, and full lume dial. And that lume lasts and lasts and lasts. It is a quality lume job for $20, less than $20. So highly recommend this watch for anybody out there looking for a field watch. Next up, we have the Baltany Military Chrono, and just did the review on this one. This one is another great watch when it comes down to the design, the features on the watch, screw down pushers. So you have a great water resistance, sapphire crystal. It's a quartz watch, so it's a grab and go watch. You have the small second hands at the 6 o'clock, which is great because the small second hand kind of disappears and it just declutters the dial even more. And then you have a 60-minute counter at the top. Keep in mind, though, that this 60-minute counter stops at 60 minutes. It doesn't continue to rotate around, which is one of the dings on this watch. I was hoping it would continue around. I didn't realize that. And I was going to give this watch the perfect 10 out of 10 until I found that out. So bead blasted case, very easy, smaller dial. So this is, I believe it's a 39 millimeter, and the Penn Islander is also a less than 40 millimeter. The rest of these have been 40 or bigger. Next up, we have the Bulova A15 Pilot. And this is a watch that just has, in my opinion, just a lot of nostalgia to it. I changed out the strap. The Bulova strap that came with it was a nice brown leather strap, darker brown. It looks nice, but I thought this NATO strap, this Horween NATO strap, just looked even better. It's a little bit thinner, and I really wanted to put a NATO strap on this watch, being a classic kind of pilot watch. It has kind of a high crystal on it, and it's just great design. The one downside to this are the internal crowns that rotate the hour and minute rings. They don't screw down, and sometimes they do move around while you're using the watch. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's not maybe necessarily the most accurate when it comes down to timing, because that can move around you a little bit, but as far as the overall movement, it's not going to be that much. Next, we have the Citizen Nighthawk. I have to give Dave over at Just the Watch credit, because when I first saw him review this watch, and this is a long-standing watch in his collection, I thought to myself, that is way, way too busy of a dial. And then I watched Mark over at Islander Watch explain the slide rule, and it really is interesting. And so all of a sudden, this Citizen Nighthawk became of interest to me. Also, it has a GMT function in the center. So I've got this set up. My oldest son is going overseas to Macedonia for some training with the Army National Guard out of Minnesota. And so I've got that set up for Macedonia time, which incidentally is Berlin time. I thought that was kind of interesting. It's on the far eastern side of that time zone. So anyway, the Nighthawk, great flight watch. A lot of stuff on here. The slide rule. Take some time to learn how it works, and there's a lot of good information that you can get off of here. You'll notice that there are some conversions between liters and gallons and meters and feet, miles and kilometers. Easy conversions for that. You can do simple math, multiplication, division, rates, all kinds of different things with the slide rule off of a log 10 system. So great flight watch. Next is the Hamilton Khaki Chrono. This is one of the heaviest watches that I have. Part of it is it's a big, thick watch. It's tall. I think it's 14 millimeters tall. Sapphire crystal, which is great. When you have a tall watch like that, you want to have a sapphire crystal just to minimize the scratches because of the high profile of the watch off of your wrist. But this is an automatic movement, and it has the minute counter, it has the hour counter, and it also has the running second over at the 9 o'clock position. So it's a great stopwatch. I love just the red tip, very fine, very thin chrono stopwatch or second hand, and start, stop, and snap back to zeros. So great watch. I added a strap co onto this watch. This was going to go on the Orient Kamasu, and I gave that away. So that's not part of my collection anymore. I have a review for that though. But I put this on here. It fit perfectly. It's a little bit different. This is a brushed steel bracelet on a bead blasted case, which doesn't look all that bad. And then I put an extension, a kind of a glide extension clasp on here, which I really like, so I can adjust this because it is a heavier watch. And all of this weight adds to a counterbalance to this very heavy case, or this very heavy top end of this watch. So one of my favorite chronos. I love chronos. I have a hard time buying them because I know you can only have so many before you really start kind of repeating yourself. So last on the field watch side is the SWC Bunker. And the SWC Bunker is my favorite field watch because it's titanium, it's light, it has that titanium bead blasted case to it, it has a great second hand, it has a great movement, it's a 9000 series movement. It also has a highly legible dial. You have the hand set on here is fantastic. The lume on this is unbelievable. It's some of the best lume on the watches that I have. I did swap out the Velcro strap, and I put on here kind of a two-toned leather strap. I think it does a really good job. Looks really good with the overall design of this watch. So as far as a field watch goes, this to me is one of the highest rated field watches that I have. It's great. It's lightweight. It's an automatic. Just awesome field watch. All right, let's move on to work watches. And so let's start off with one of the cheapest watches that I have, which is the Greyman, the Casio W800H. And this is a watch that I use for work all the time. And it's a great low profile, very lightweight, 10-year life on the battery. Watch has all the basic functions: alarm, stopwatch, timer, dual time. And the timer, I've modified this watch. You just remove some solder on the module and you get a recurring timer if you want, which means if you want to have the timer go for 3 minutes, and as soon as it beeps, it starts right back over again in 3 minutes, you can do that. Very legible display, one of the most legible displays of my work watch series that I have. They're all Casios, and they do a great job just providing me with, a real cheap, great timekeeping piece. I use the timer function, the stopwatch function all the time for work as far as keeping track of jobs that I'm doing and billing. One thing I don't like is the Casio strap with the holes. Too big of holes, and the holes are too far apart. If they could make the holes a little smaller and move them maybe a little bit closer together, you would get a better fit. This one fits pretty good because it's so light. Moving on to the next one, which is the Casio W736H. This is the highest rated Casio that I have as far as my rating systems are concerned. This one is a 9.5 out of 10. It has excellent light or illumination. It has a great protection for the mineral crystal. The buttons on here are very easy to access, and they're also protected. Unlike the square, which the buttons are recessed and kind of nestled away in kind of a little cavernous space. The light button, I love the light button down here in the center at the 6 o'clock position. Very legible dial. This is the most legible dial that I have. When you look at this versus the Greyman, okay? The Greyman, I don't need to know the year, you know, and these are the things that just waste space when it comes down to it. So I try to go for simplicity when it comes to a digital display, and you can certainly see that this watch, the 736, that I call it the Big Sky, the Big Sky has it all. It has all that I need with the exception of the strap, and it is the tallest of all the watches that, well, second tallest. I have another one I just got. The second tallest of the watches that I have, and so it's a snag. It's a snaggy type watch. It's going to catch on things, but it's also a cheap watch, less than $50. So you got that going for you. If I can quote Carl from Caddyshack, well, you got that going for you. Next up is the Casio 5610, the classic square, Casio square. This is a tough solar, atomic timekeeping, all the classic functions, multiple alarms, multiple time zones, and you can see the difference when it comes down to display. And I think the Greyman does a better job on legibility, and as far as just overall size and dimensions, they're almost identical as far as case size goes, but you can just see the time much easier. The 736 has that classic G-Shock look as well. It's not formally a G-Shock, but keep in mind this also has a vibration alarm, a vibrating alarm. So if you don't want to have the sound go off, you're in a meeting, or you want a discrete alarm, this is the watch to get. Now, doesn't have atomic, doesn't have tough solar, so this watch to me has a couple of features that really knock it down a couple of notches, where this watch, the 5610U, the square, has tough solar, has atomic timekeeping, has all the other functions, and for that reason I really like this watch. All right, last Casio, and it is the PRW6600Y, the triple sensor Pathfinder. And this watch has it all. It's an ani-digi, so it has an analog display and a digital display. And the digital display does a good job. It's kind of that negative display look to it. I'm not a fan of negative displays. I prefer the traditional displays. It has okay illumination as far as the light goes. It does have lumed hands and numbers, and it's below average. So you have two illumination pieces that are below average, but you have options. So in the middle of the night, again, I can press the light button and I can here's the light button right here at the 6 o'clock position. So I like that. Very easy, and you get the light in the middle of the night. It lights it all up. It does even light up the numbers. It lights it from the bottom to the top. So, the 11, 12, and 1 o'clock indices are not as well lit as the 5, 6, and 7 as a result. So those are my work watches. This is my quintessential outdoor watch. You can't get one any better than this. It has altimeter, barometer, compass, temperature, has all the time zones, has stopwatch, timer, alarms. It has everything. Tough solar. It also has atomic timekeeping. So this is the watch. If there was one, the apocalypse ending of the world, which I won't be here, but if I was here for some odd reason, or if this was almost the end of the world, this would be the watch I would probably make sure I had. This and maybe a couple other watches, but If there was just one, this might be it because of what it can do. Okay. Of course, the atomic timekeeping function, if the world's coming to an end, is probably not going to be working anymore. So, but the tough solar, you know, it's hard to beat that. That's something that you really got to have, I think, when it comes down to a do-it-all watch. And as the battery starts to wear out, the second hand will start to skip every other second, so it saves some energy that way. And also, the hands do move out of the way. If you're doing something and it's covering up the digital display, you can press the light button and the 8 o'clock pusher at the same time, and both hands move up to the 2 o'clock, the 2:10 position, basically, up and out of the way totally. So cool feature when it comes down to it. Is one of the things when I first got it, like, how do I read the stopwatch when the minute hand is right over the 6 o'clock? It's hard to read. So there's a feature for that moves those hands out of the way for you. Okay. Next, we have the diver watches, sport watches. These are the watches that I didn't think I was as big a fan of these watches as I am. However, I found that the first couple watches that I bought that were divers, they were black, stainless steel, fairly plain. And not that much long after that, I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a little bit of color, something a little bit different. So we'll start off with one of the earlier watches that I purchased and also have modified with a different strap, and that is the Seiko Samurai. It's a great watch. I love it. Very easy to read, great lume. I love the bezel design. I love the two-tone bezel. The date window is fine. It works great. The size of the watch, the angle of the case, you get these just different angles. I love the coin edge bezel. The bezel itself is unimpressive, but overall the watch, it's a great watch. I like it a lot. I put a different strap or bracelet on here, and it is the most comfortable bracelet that I've ever worn. You can see that it just articulates in so many different directions that it lends itself to being worn even more snug because it's so contouring to the wrist. So no fear on the hair pulling. I've never had that sensation that this pulls hair at all. But this is a great bracelet. It's also an eye catcher. I love that little mini links in here that bring these other larger links together. So it's a great watch. Automatic, keeps time reasonably well. The downside is mineral crystal or hardlex crystal. I don't get it. Seiko is Seiko when it comes down to crystals. They should fix that. Next up is another Seiko, and this one is the Seiko 5 series of watches, and I just love the color. And now the cool part about the color, it's brown. It's got that kind of brown bronze look to it, especially in the bezel. But when you look at the case, and you look at the case compared to another stainless steel case, you really start to see the difference in case coloring, and that is what sold it to me. I've never seen the plating of a case like that, and it does a great job of just adding to that overall brown bronze look to it. So sold for that reason. I don't wear it a lot, but I do like wearing it. It does have a fairly good bezel on it. So all of these divers I use sometimes for work, because I can time things on here. I can just set the timer to whatever hour I'm working, and time things for hours on end when I'm doing a larger project. So, and they're easy to read, and I just like the dive watch. Is one of my favorite watch designs, I think, for a lot of people, and so I've got a few of them. But overall, it's nice. I don't like the fact that it's a push-pull crown. I wish it was a screw-down crown. At the same time, they designed it that way, so it should hold up that way. I do like the fact that the second hand is green. It stands out from the rest of the watch really well. And so again, features, if you look at the surface of the dial, has some nice texturing on the dial, all kinds of cool features about this watch that get past just the Seiko 5 look to it. So another keeper on the dive watch side. Phoibos Proteus, one of the most creative watch designs of a diver, Has some similarities to the Seiko Samurai on the case design. But you'll notice that the crystal on this is a domed crystal. You can see the camera reflection in the background really easy. I love the hour indices. The one downside to the way these hour indices are designed is it's hard to see which one is 12 unless your pip on your bezel is lined up with the 12. Otherwise, you could be off by an hour, you know, if your hand's canted one way or the other. Or like me, you don't have your reading glasses on, and that just adds a little blurriness to the whole picture. So, but if you look at the second hand, that lightning bolt second hand with a red tip on the end is outstanding. The lume is not only the hour markers in the hands, but it's also the ring around, the minute chapter ring around the hour marker. That also illuminates along with the bezel. And so just a fantastic illumination job. I love the crown. The same thing with the Seiko Samurai. The crown on it is awesome, the knurled crown. I love the design of the crown on this. Okay, great design in the back, a little embossed octopus on the back. Good bracelet. I love the bracelet design. I like the reflections that you get off of the links. Okay, pretty straightforward bracelet, nothing spectacular. 4 micro adjust. Remember, there's 4 holes, but there's only 3 positions because one of them is being used. So going back to my keep that in mind thing, you'll notice that the Seiko and the Phoibos both have a similar case design as far as angles go. And another piece that kind of attracted me to the Phoibos was the fact of these angles. I think it contrasts with the circular dial really nicely as far as the artistic part of it goes. But you'll see that the cases on the Seiko and the Phoibos have some real clear similarities between them. Next up, we're going to go with one of the best budget divers, I think, on the market. I don't know how you can't go wrong with this at all. It's a steel dive Willard. Certainly it's the homage to the Seiko, but it has, for, I believe this is right at around $100. I don't know how you can beat this. Great movement, great finishing, great clasp. Look at the clasp, look at the micro adjusts on there. Push button deployment clasp. Polished on the sides of the end links, or solid links, solid end links. Great bezel, coin edge bezel. The illumination on this, the lume on here is great overnight. And what caught my attention was the yellow. It's not a super bright yellow. It's kind of a dull yellow, which I really like. And so the color on this watch is fantastic. There's another one out there that's orange, and I think it's kind of a burnt orange. I love that color, burnt orange. And so this one really fits the bill when it comes down to just a dive watch with some color and a little bit of change to it. So it's not just those, silvers and blacks when it comes down to dial design. Pretty straightforward dial. Not a lot to it, but I love the simplicity of it. Easy identification of the 12 o'clock position. Very simple layout. The 3 o'clock indice is taken up by the date. If you're going to do the date on an indice, take up the entire date, or take up the entire indice. Don't play around with trying to keep part of it. Next up, we have a smaller diameter watch. This is under 40 millimeters. This is the Revlot Hex Mariner 39 in army green, gilted. And I love the pip on the bezel outlined in red. The lume on this is fantastic. Look at the dial design. The texturing on the dial, the hex is all over the place. The indices are hexed. I mean, there's just so much, the theme that goes into the Hex Mariner that is just fantastic. And then you get the display case back that also has the hex shape as well. Good clasp, good bracelet. Just a kind of a classy looking watch. It's got some shine to it. This is about as much gold as I can handle. I can't handle the bicolored bracelets, so I like the design here. And if you look at the bracelet itself, it has kind of that hex look to it as well. So the theme overall in this watch is what really caught my eye on this, the design of it. And it's just a great overall watch. And again, the date window takes up the entire 6 o'clock indice, which is great. It does really well with timekeeping. And again, you kind of get a little bit of that angular look on the case. A little high polish on the beveled edges of the case. So you get a little bit of shine without overdoing it. Next up, the very popular lume giant, and that is the Signum Cuda. And I went after the orange dial because the lighter dial, the white dial, just seemed a little bit too white, along with the hands being white. And so during the daytime, I wanted the contrast of the hands to the dial. The lume on this is insane. Even though it's orange, the lume is orange. The lume off the bezel is insane. You've got a lume on the crown. The overall design of this is titanium all the way around, and it's good. There's nothing really that special about it as far as just kind of the design goes. Very straightforward, very predictable. Great dive watch design. Date window takes up the entire 6 o'clock indice. That's great. The second hand, you can kind of see it. It gets lost a little bit with the orange end to it with the orange dial. So it's kind of hard to keep track of the second hand. But overall, I think this does a great job. Great watch for the money. You can't beat a full lume dial watch. I love full lume dial watches. Speaking of full lume dials, we have the Zelos Hammerhead Frost in a bronze case. And again, just the look of this case, angular case combined with the circular dial, lumed crown, lume on the dial is just outstanding. It's actually very comparable to the Cuda. I'm going to do a competition between these full lume dials, and you've seen now, I think, 3 of them, including that $20 one. And so looking at this watch, you know that the bronze is going to change over time. It's going to get darker, which is going to match up really well with this black strap. The black strap is a little bit heavy. The holes, I wish the holes were just a little bit closer together. It does have kind of that Casio feel to it, where it's just a little bit too big or a little bit too small, maybe a little bit closer together. But you have the bronze hardware. Bronze, I mean, it's an overall great design. Great design. Heavier, brass is a little bit heavier as far as its overall density than stainless steel. So this is a heavier case, so be prepared for that. I got a message from one of the viewers that said they had the stainless steel case with the stainless steel bracelet, and it's a heavy watch overall, but the stainless steel bracelet kind of helped balance out the weight up on top of the wrist. And I can see that. So I think this watch, it does well on the wrist. I've worn this working. I've worn this around quite a bit, and it's already starting to patina. You can start to see some of the color change is starting to happen on the inside of the case where it's touching the skin, getting some of the acids and oils off your skin, and that's going to start to darken up the case. So I'm really looking forward to how dark this case looks after about 6 months to well over a year probably. I don't know. Depends on how much I wear this while I'm working. But the lume on this is insane. Absolutely insane. It is a night light on your wrist. Okay. Next up is the GMT, the Borealis Sea Storm Mark II GMT. Great bezel. I believe it's a sapphire bezel. It's illuminated. The lume on this is really, really well done. The numbers, the hour markers, the bezel, the hands, the second hand, the GMT hand, really well done. Lasts all night. I love the design of this. I do like the black and green. The colors of my company are green, so this actually is looking more like a company watch. And you have some embossing on the back, which is really nice. Nice feature there. Signed crown. Typical kind of diver dimensions as far as the height goes. It's a thicker watch. Most divers are. But it's just a great looking watch. It's a GMT. I wanted to get a GMT, and I waited, I think this was about 6 months before this one arrived. And so I just got this recently. So it's a great, great watch. I love it. I love the look of this watch. Next up is the Wise Adamascus AD8. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dive watch. It's the, 904L steel. If I got the numbers right, I think it's 904L. The same kind of steel they use for Rolex, high polished steel. And when it comes down to it, and you got a nice crystal on here, sapphire crystal, the lume on this is also insane. You know, the SWC Bunker, the two full lume dial watches, the Frost, the Zelos Frost, and also the Signum Cuda, and then also the Borealis. They all have incredible lume on here, just incredible. I love the handset on here. I love the dial texturing in here. You've seen the reviews probably of this one. Just outstanding design. I love the 12 o'clock is differentiated from the other hours. The bezel action is great. Screw down crown. It's a high beat movement, 9000 series Miyota movement. Has a display case back. The leather strap is awesome. It has that kind of wine red burgundy look to it. Goes really well. It's going to wear well. It's going to have a little bit of that, you know, that wearing look to it, to the leather. Just a great watch. I believe it's 200 meters of water resistance. So it's a dive watch that I certainly would not go diving with it. It's just too nice of a watch to do that. Certainly not going to wear this to work. But this is definitely a watch that I would wear for casual and dress purposes. It's a real eye-opener. My wife loves this watch. She likes the look of the watch. Just a fantastic watch. So there is the Wise Adamascus AD8. I love the red. Of all the colors that they have, the red is the one that I love the most. And I saw they came out with a Damascus steel watch, and I'm just not quite there on the Damascus steel for a case. I think it's a little too busy on the area of the watch that probably doesn't need that much attention. It should be more focused on the dial. So the Wise is, it's a great watch. Great watch. Well worth the investment. As far as the cost goes, this might be the best overall diver micro brand on the market today. I don't see one that's better than this. It's almost perfect. Almost perfect. It's also thin. I mean, when you look at a dive watch compared to other dive watches, I'll pull up the steel dive. And when you get those Seiko movements in here, and you look at just how thin these watches can be, you know, yeah, it just captures a different quality about a dive watch. So yeah, it's a dive watch, but it is a dressy dive watch. All right, so there is the series for the outdoor watches. Oh, wait, hang on, we got one more, almost forgot. Newest member of the bunch. He's been baking out in the sun. It is the Citizen Pro Master Aqualand. Irresistible as a tool watch. I had another watch that was big and chunky like this one. I haven't done the review on this yet. This one is massive. It is absolutely massive. And it's cool. It has some different features. That's a water sensor. This is where you adjust the time. And this is the pressure sensor over here. This is where I think your greatest depth, and then also you can adjust the location of the depth arrow when it's in the resting position. But overall, cool watch. I love the color of the bezel. I think what caught my attention was that color. And then also just the chunky. I mean, everybody I think needs to have one watch that just has kind of a statement to it. Like this is just big. So when you get this on the wrist, it is massive and it's cool looking, I think. And it has the right color combination. So it has a little bit of pop to it, but not so much that it overwhelms people when they look at it. And they always ask, you know, what is this thing over here? You know, and just it generates questions. So one of the things about watches that I found in collecting is not only do you have options as a guy in particular with what you're wearing, but you also generate conversations. I like Kevin O'Leary and Teddy Baldessari. They talk about this, you know, the watch community. You wear watches partly because of the function, but also because it goes with what you're wearing. And I think a residual is just the fact that you can have conversations with other watch enthusiasts about your watch or people that are just plain curious. So I'll show a picture of all these watches here and a real quick video tour of these watches that I just went through so that you can see them and just the variety that I have, different colors, different styles, different illuminations, different movements. I really do like quartz movements. I think quartz movements provide something that is really attractive, that grab and go. I don't have to keep fiddling with the time every time, especially when you have more than 5 or 6 watches. It's really hard to keep them all, the automatic watches, running. So quartz movements, I think, are very beneficial to have in a variety of different styles too. So I have a quartz chronograph, I have quartz digital watches, I have a quartz dive watch. I think I have a quartz dress watch that I'm going to be showing you pretty soon here. So all of those just give that grab and go option as well. I have bigger dials, small dials. I've now gotten into, I think that Islander, this guy right here, is a 36 millimeter, and I'm becoming more used to that smaller dial, and there's something about it that's really nice. The proportions of something like that really work well, where it doesn't look too blocky because it's short and stout. So different size dials is also important. Colors, go out and try different colors. You know, when you have colors that are blue, you know, get a yellow in there. You've got, you know, maybe a red, orange, you know, different colors. You can get a little bit of bling in there with some gold. You know, this one's green. It has a green dial. You know, just try different colors. Even, you know, I got a guy who commented on this watch saying, you know, it looked like, you know, kind of a despicable brown. And yeah, it is brown, but it has a bronze look to it. And I like the case, the case part of it, and just pay attention to some of those details. You know, maybe the bezel has a different color to it. White, you know, when you get something that's white like that. And then of course, chronograph, you know, you start getting into, you know, different styles. Or knocking your camera over. Different functions. You know, you can have a watch where it really does something totally different, where it keeps track of elapsed time differently and more of a classic look. Field watches, you know, field watches are great for that. So just have some variety, go after it, try it, stay within your budget. Don't ever take a loan out on a watch. Don't ever borrow money to buy a watch. Save up for it. You'll thank yourself later for not having to make payments on any of that stuff. You shouldn't ever have to make payments on it. But enjoy the watch. Rotate through them. You know, wear some, but make sure that you wear all of them. You know, if you're not wearing all of them, then you really need to sell them. And I really honestly go through all of these watches, some more than others, but I honestly go through all of them and I enjoy all of them. So enjoy the journey.